Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. In the previous lecture we had started with the topic of pulmonary volumes and capacities. In today's lecture we are going to continue with the same topic. We have already discussed this diagram in our previous lecture. I am just going to briefly describe it again. This is the spirogram. This recording of lung volumes and capacities, showing us different lung volumes, 4 lung volumes and 4 important lung capacities. So this is the tidal volume, which has a normal value of 500 ml. This is the inspiratory reserve volume with a normal value of 3500 ml, and this is the expiratory reserve volume, which has a normal value of 1100 ml, and this is the residual volume, which has a normal value of 1200 ml. It is the volume of air which is present in the lungs after most forceful expiration. We have 4 important pulmonary capacities. The inspiratory capacity, which has a value of 3500 ml. We have functional residual capacity, which has a normal value of 2300 ml. It is the volume of air in the lungs at the end of tidal expiration. That is, when you are breathing normally, after exhaling the tidal volume, the volume of air which is present in the lungs is functional residual capacity, which has a normal value of 2300 ml. Then we have the vital capacity. Vital capacity is the volume of air which is exhaled out forcefully after first filling the lungs to maximum extent. It includes 3 lung volumes: the inspiratory reserve volume, the tidal volume, and the expiratory reserve volume. The normal value of vital capacity is 4600 ml. Then we have the total lung capacity. Now total lung capacity is the maximum volume of air with which the lungs can be inflated. It is a combination of all 4 lung volumes: the tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, and the residual volume. Again, this is the slide showing different lung volumes and capacities. Now, this slide shows you how does a normal spirogram look like when you record it with the spirometer. This is the recording of tidal volume, and here this is the inspiratory reserve volume. This is the recording of expiratory reserve volume. So what you can record on a spirometer is the vital capacity, which has 3 volumes in it: the tidal volume, the inspiratory reserve volume, and the expiratory reserve volume. Now we are going to discuss the variations in lung volumes and capacities. Now, different factors that affect lung volumes and capacities can be the physiological factors, or physiological variations can be there, and there can be pathological variations in the lung volumes and capacities, which occur under abnormal conditions when a person is suffering from some form of disease. So first we are going to discuss the physiological variations in lung volumes and capacities, and then we are going to discuss the pathological variations. So first is the effect of gender. All lung volumes and capacities are about 20 to 25% less in females as compared to males. Body build also affects the lung volumes and capacities. The people who are tall and thin have more lung volumes and capacities as compared to the people who are short and obese. Then physical fitness also affects the lung volumes and capacities. Those people who are more fit physically, like athletes, they have more lung volumes and capacities as compared to non-athletes. Then there is the effect of posture on different lung volumes and capacities as well. The vital capacity is decreased in lying down as compared to the sitting position. The vital capacity is decreased on lying down because of the fact that more blood is retained in the lungs in lying posture, and this interferes with the inflation of the lungs. So when a person lies down, the vital capacity is decreased. When we compare the sitting position or posture with the standing posture, the vital capacity is more in sitting posture as compared to the standing position. Again, I am repeating, when we compare the sitting and the standing posture, the vital capacity recorded in the sitting posture is more as compared to the standing position. So this is the effect of posture on the lung volumes and capacities. Then is the effect of age. With age, there is increase in the residual volume, because with advancing age there is loss of elastic tissue in the lungs, which interferes with the lung recoil during expiration, and this causes the air volume in the lungs to be increased. So we can say this is a physiological change occurring with age, that in old age the residual volume and functional residual capacity may be increased. So these are physiological variations in lung volumes and capacities. Now we are going to discuss the pathological variations which occur under abnormal conditions. The first condition is paralysis of respiratory muscles. The paralysis of respiratory muscles, it causes a decrease in lung volumes and capacities. Because of the paralysis of respiratory muscle, there is difficulty in expansion of the lungs. So lung volumes and capacities are reduced. Then next condition is decreased lung mass. Now decreased lung mass may occur when lobectomy is done. The lobectomy means when a lobe of lung is surgically removed. So when a lobe of the lung is removed surgically, it will result in decreased lung mass. A lung mass can also be decreased in diseases like tuberculosis. So decreased lung mass is associated with decrease in lung volumes and capacities. Then comes the obstructive lung diseases. Now obstructive lung diseases are a group of pulmonary diseases in which there is obstruction in the airways. Now obstruction in the airways interfere with expiration more as compared to inspiration. It causes an increase in airway resistance, which make it difficult to expire, due to which there is increase in the functional residual capacity and the residual volume. So in obstructive lung diseases, there is increase in the residual volume and the functional residual capacity. Then chest deformities also interfere with the lungs expansion, and they cause a decrease in lung volume and capacities. Now, abdominal distension, which may be caused by ascites, which is the collection of free fluid in the abdominal cavity, or abdominal distension may be caused by pregnancy. Abdominal distension, it causes a decrease in the vital capacity because it interferes with normal lung expansion. Again, I am repeating that abdominal distension, either because of ascites or because of pregnancy, it causes a decrease in the vital capacity because it interferes with normal expansion of the lungs, or we can say it interferes with the descent of diaphragm during inspiration, so it decreases the vital capacity. Then there is another disease of the lung known as pulmonary fibrosis. Now this disease is characterized by formation of fibrous tissue in the lungs, which has less elasticity as compared to the normal elastic tissue present in the lungs. So in pulmonary fibrosis, there is decrease in the lung volumes and capacities. Again, I am repeating that in pulmonary fibrosis, which is also categorized as a restrictive lung disease, there is decrease in the lung volumes and capacities because fibrous tissue is not as stretchable as the elastic tissue normally present in the lungs. So these were different pathological variations in the lung volumes and capacities. Now we are going to talk about the forced vital capacity. Forced vital capacity is abbreviated as FVC. All three letters will be capital. Again, I am repeating that forced vital capacity is abbreviated as FVC. It is defined as the maximum volume of air that is exhaled out forcefully from the lungs in shortest possible time after a maximum inspiration. The normal value of forced vital capacity is 4600 ml. Now the question is, what is the difference between the vital capacity and the forced vital capacity? Now during measurement of the vital capacity, it is not necessary to exhale out forcefully, it is not necessary to exhale out rapidly or to exhale out in shortest possible time. Again, I am repeating that when you are measuring the vital capacity, it is not necessary for the subject to exhale out rapidly in shortest possible time. Whereas during measurement of forced vital capacity, the subject is asked to exhale forcefully and as rapidly as he can after first inhaling to maximum extent. So the difference between the vital capacity and the forced vital capacity is just to exhale out as rapidly as possible, that is the forced vital capacity, and if it is not necessary to exhale out rapidly in case of vital capacity. Otherwise the two values are the same, that is 4600 ml is the value of vital capacity and same is the value of the forced vital capacity. Now forced vital capacity, it is normal or slightly decreased in obstructive lung diseases. I just described that obstructive lung diseases are the group of diseases of the lungs which are characterized by airway obstruction and increased airway resistance. So forced vital capacity may be normal or may be decreased in obstructive lung diseases, but it is always decreased in restrictive lung diseases. Now restrictive lung diseases are the other group of pulmonary diseases, and this group of pulmonary diseases is basic problem in these diseases is that there is an interference with the expansion of the lungs. So if there is a problem with the expansion of the lungs due to any pathology, that comes under the heading of restrictive lung disease. And if there is obstruction in the airways, that comes under the heading of obstructive lung diseases. So I am again repeating that the forced vital capacity may be normal or it may be decreased in obstructive lung diseases, but it is always decreased in restrictive lung diseases. Now, next is forced expiratory volume in 1 second. It is FEV1. Forced expiratory volume 1 or FEV1. Now, FEV1 is the volume of air that is exhaled in first second during determination or during measurement of forced vital capacity. You are measuring the forced vital capacity of a subject, and the volume of air that he or she is going to exhale in the first second during measurement of forced vital capacity, that volume of air is known as FEV1. Now, FEV1 is expressed as a percentage of forced vital capacity, and it is known as FEV1 to FVC ratio or FEV1 to FVC percentage. So it is not an absolute value, it is a relative percentage. It's a percentage of the forced vital capacity. Again, I am repeating, FEV1 is the volume of air which is exhaled out in first second during measurement of the forced vital capacity, and it is expressed as a percentage of forced vital capacity, which is known as FEV1 to FVC ratio. Now, normal FEV1 to FVC percentage is about 75% to 85%. In obstructive lung diseases, there is marked reduction in this ratio. It may be as low as 47%, while in restrictive lung diseases, FEV1 to FVC percentage FEV1 to FVC percentage is normal. Again, I am repeating that in obstructive lung diseases, there is a marked reduction in FEV1 to FVC ratio. It may be as low as 47%, while in restrictive lung diseases, it may be normal or slightly increased. You can just remember that in restrictive lung diseases, the FEV1 to FVC ratio is normal. Ignore that it is slightly increased. Just remember that in restrictive lung diseases, FEV1 to FVC ratio is normal. Now, what is the significance of measuring FEV1 to FVC percentage or FEV1 to FVC ratio? Now, this ratio, it helps to differentiate between the obstructive and restrictive lung diseases, the two groups of diseases that we just discussed. In obstructive lung diseases, there is increased airway resistance because of obstruction, which makes the expiration difficult. Due to difficulty in expiration, person cannot exhale out normally. So there is a decrease in the amount of air which is expelled during first second, that is FEV1. FEV1 is decreased, but total FVC is almost normal. I am repeating this point that measurement of FEV1 to FVC help us to differentiate between the obstructive and restrictive lung diseases. What happens in obstructive lung diseases? In obstructive lung diseases, due to obstruction, there is increased airway resistance. Increased airway resistance makes it difficult to expire, due to which the volume of air exhaled in the first second it is markedly reduced, but total FVC, that is the forced vital capacity, is almost normal, a point that we have already discussed. So because of this, FEV1 to FVC ratio is markedly reduced. In severe cases, it may be as low as 47%. In restrictive lung diseases, there is an interference with the expansion of the lungs. There is decreased compliance or expansibility of the lungs. Now, decreased compliance of the lungs causes both the forced vital capacity and FEV1 to decrease proportionately. I am repeating this point. This is very important point to understand, that in restrictive lung diseases, there is decreased expansibility of the lungs, or we can say there is decreased compliance of the lungs. So when there is decreased compliance of the lungs, everything is going to be affected equally. There will be reduction in forced vital capacity, as well as there will be reduction in the FEV1. So when both are going to decrease, the ratio or the percentage will remain the same. So that's why in restrictive lung diseases, FEV1 to FVC ratio is normal, because both the values are going to change proportionately. And in case of obstructive lung diseases, there is marked reduction in this FEV1 as compared to FVC, so ratio is going to decrease. So this difference of the ratio helps us to differentiate between the two conditions, that are the obstructive and the restrictive lung diseases. Now this is the graph of FEV1 to FVC ratio in a normal person and in a person with airway obstruction. So upper one is forced vital capacity and FEV1 to FVC percentage in a normal person, and this is recorded from a person with airway obstruction. Now we are going to look at these one by one. On the x-axis we have the time in seconds, and on y-axis we have lung volume given in liters. Now in normal persons, the forced vital capacity is about 4600 ml, while FEV1 is normal is 75% to 85%, that is the range, and average value we can say it is 80%. What does this 80% means? It means that 80% of air, 80% of forced vital capacity is exhaled in the first second during measurement of forced vital capacity. It takes about 3 to 4 seconds in a normal person to exhale out the vital capacity when he is going to do it as rapidly as possible. And 80% of the air is exhaled out in the first second, which is FEV1. So FEV1 to FVC percentage in a normal person is 80%. Now we will see what happens when there is an airway obstruction. When there is airway obstruction, there is a problem with the expiration. We can see that total vital capacity, total forced vital capacity is almost normal. It is slightly decreased as compared to a normal person. Forced vital capacity is slightly decreased as compared to a normal person. The change that has occurred is that it takes more time to exhale forced vital capacity as compared to a normal person. It takes more time to exhale out the forced vital capacity. Why it takes more time? Because of airway obstruction, which leads to increased airway resistance. There is difficulty in the flow of air during expiration. Due to this, the volume of air which is exhaled in the first second is markedly reduced. You can compare it with the normal person. The volume of air which is exhaled in the first second is markedly reduced. FEV1 is markedly reduced, while there is a slight decrease in FVC. Now because of this, the ratio is decreased markedly. It may be it may be as low as 47%. So this will help us to differentiate an obstructive and a restrictive lung disease. In restrictive lung diseases, both these values are going to decrease, FEV1 as well as FVC. So ratio will be unchanged, or we can say it will be normal. This is the spirogram in obstructive lung disease. You can see that there is decrease in the vital capacity, but not so much. There is decrease in expiratory reserve volume, quite a big value, a big reduction in expiratory reserve volume, because there is difficulty in expiration because of increased airway resistance. And when there is difficulty in expiration, the air is trapped inside the lungs, which causes increase in the residual volume and functional residual capacity, the point that we discussed with pathological variations in lung volumes and capacities. Now the next topic is minute respiratory volume. It is minute respiratory volume, not minute. Many students say it minute respiratory volume, but this is minute respiratory volume. And what is it? It is the total volume of new air moved into respiratory passages each minute. That is, the volume of air that moves into the respiratory passages in 1 minute is called as minute respiratory volume. It's very simple to calculate. It's very easy to calculate. We can calculate the respiratory minute volume by multiplying the tidal volume with respiratory rate. The tidal volume is 500 ml and respiratory rate, average respiratory rate is 12 breaths per minute. So the minute respiratory volume is 6000 ml per minute or 6 liter per minute. Now next is determination of functional residual capacity, residual volume and the total lung capacity. These are those lung volumes and capacities which cannot be measured by direct spirometry. And the reason for this is that residual volume cannot be expelled from the lungs. So these lung volumes and capacities are determined indirectly. We measure the use the helium dilution method to determine the functional residual capacity, and once the functional residual capacity is determined, from this we can calculate the residual volume and the total lung capacity. So what is the procedure? The procedure is known as helium dilution method. Now in this method, a spirometer of known volume, this is the spirometer containing having a known volume of air which is mixed with helium at a known concentration. So this is the spirometer containing air mixed with helium, and volume of the spirometer or the total volume of air is known, and we also know the concentration of helium. Now at the end of a normal expiration, that is the tidal expiration, when the lungs are at functional residual capacity, the subject begins to breathe through the spirometer. Now when the subject begins to breathe through the spirometer, the gases in the spirometer are going to mix up with the gases in the lungs. So as a result, helium begins to be diluted. I am repeating, that person begins at the end of the tidal expiration. When a person begins to breathe through the spirometer, this helium will begin to mix up with the gases in the lungs. And from degree of dilution of helium, we can calculate the functional residual capacity. Because when a person is breathing normally or quietly, the lung volume is at functional residual capacity. So helium will be diluted by functional residual capacity gases in the lungs, and we can calculate this volume from degree of dilution of helium. And the formula which is used is FRC, which stands for functional residual capacity, is equal to initial concentration of helium divided by final concentration of helium minus 1 multiplied by initial volume of the spirometer. So by putting the values in this formula, we can calculate the functional residual capacity. Once the functional residual capacity is calculated, we can calculate the residual volume by subtracting the expiratory reserve volume from functional residual capacity. Ignore this point, this is not any sign, this is just a dash to show you a point. So residual volume can be calculated by subtracting the expiratory reserve volume from functional residual capacity, and expiratory reserve volume is measured by direct spirometry. And we can also calculate the total lung capacity by adding inspiratory capacity to functional residual capacity. The sum of functional residual capacity and inspiratory capacity is equal to total lung capacity. Again, inspiratory capacity is measured by direct spirometry. So that's how we can calculate the functional residual capacity, the residual volume and the total lung capacity by using the spirometer in an indirect way, and this method is known as helium dilution method. So with this, we are finished with our topic. Now I am going to tell you the important questions from the previous two lectures, from the topics that we have covered in the previous two lectures. So important questions are these. The question can come like, draw and label normal spirogram. So all of you must know how to draw and label a normal spirogram. And when you draw the spirogram, it should correspond, the graph should be proper, and your drawing should correspond to the normal values. That if you are showing the tidal volume, it should show by measurement a value of 500 ml according to the scale that you have taken on the y-axis for the lung volumes. So you should know how to draw and label a normal spirogram. Then second important question is, define residual volume, give its significance. So we have covered it in our previous lecture. Then question can come like, what is vital capacity? Give variations in vital capacity. Now all those factors that we discussed in general for the variations in lung volumes and capacities, you can describe all those factors for variations in the vital capacity. So this is nothing different. The factors that we have generally discussed for all the lung volumes and capacities, you can also describe those factors for variations in the vital capacity. Then another important question is, what is FVV1 to FVC percentage? We just did in today's session. And what is its significance? That we have also covered. And the last question is that which lung volumes and capacities cannot be measured by direct spirometry and why? And we have also covered it, and I think after listening to both lectures, you will be quite fairly able to answer all these questions. My advice to you all is to at least try to attempt these questions in your registers so that you can practice your SCQs as well. And thank you for your listening. That's all for today.